What's going on YouTube? CloverBells here, back with another Series 12 team building video, and today we're taking a look at another unlikely pair, Dialga and Calyrex Ice Rider. So this will be the last video for the month of June, and that means in the next video, which would be the start of July, we're going to put out another 5 rental codes for you to try. And believe it or not, Series 12 has pretty much come and gone. We got just last 2 months left, and then there's Worlds within the month of August, but still we're still building, we're still chugging away, still trying out different combinations before the format ends, right? And this is one of them. Dialga and Calyrex, we've done Dialga Calyrex Shadow, we've even done Dialga, Kyogre, Dialga Groudon. Now we're going to take a look at Dialga and Calyrex Ice Rider, and I also want to take a look at some point Dialga Ho-Oh. I think we'll save that for July, but I think Dialga Calyrex Ice Rider is interesting to the naked eye, right? Now you might figure, well, wouldn't it be similar to Palkia and Calyrex Ice Rider? And in some ways it is, right? They're both dragons. They both get access to Trick Room. But the thing is, Palkia is a little bit better, and you notice that it's used a lot more than the Dialga on this kind of pair, right? Especially in like a competitive play. That's because there's some weaknesses here with this duo that makes it a little bit hard to run in a high level competitive play, and we'll talk about that as we build the team. But what does this do? So basically, what are the weaknesses of Ice Rider, right? It's weak to Incineroar. The Intimidate spam is not good. It's weak to that fire move, of course. Flare Blitz is what I mean. Then it's also weak to Zacian, right? The Behemoth Blade can just absolutely destroy the Ice Rider, unless you're running Babiri Berry, right? But then you need Trick Room up, otherwise he just kills you next turn, right? And then to a degree, a little bit of the Yveltal stuff, but then again, the Yveltal is also weak against Ice, as long as you get the Trick Room up. But again, the Shadow Rider is also another thing you have to worry about, even Lunala, right? So these are some of the weaknesses you have to consider. But again, a lot of it gets eliminated if you have Trick Room up, because you get to go first and knock out the threat before they knock you out. Now, at least with Dialga over here, you can mitigate that Incineroar threat by just smashing it with a max Quake. And then Dialga doesn't really like Landorus a whole lot, right? Or even Groudon. And Calyrex Ice Rider does well against both of those. So you have that in terms of like support and synergy. And what's also neat that Dialga can do that Palkia cannot is Dialga can Dynamax and give it Steel Spike boost, as well as Quake boost. Now technically Palkia can do that too, but not the Steel Spike boost. And the Steel Spike boost is also pretty good because that'll help you against Zacian and Incineroar stuff, even Groudon to a degree, right? So there's always that, and then from there, you can just outbulk these and then, just get your Trick Room up again if it expires, and then just, sweep the opponent, right? But again, the thing with Dialga is, again, the Dynamax thing, right? Outside of Dynamax is just not that good. So like when you Dynamax Dialga, you have to make sure you're picking up KOs like immediately, like at least 2 KOs. Anything less is not good, because then when Dynamax is gone, then Dialga is just not that great, right? Calyrex doesn't have to Dynamax, right? It already puts enough pressure with the Glacial Land stuff. But again, you can Dynamax this if you have to, but then that means Dialga doesn't Dynamax. And then if Dialga doesn't Dynamax, then maybe you just don't bring it, right? So that's always like the key here, right? Now, at least Palkia, you have, Spatial Rend, which is pretty okay, outside of Dynamax, but Dialga's, it's just not that good. It's signature move. So that's why we're avoid using it, which also just doesn't make it great outside of Max. But anyway, so that's it for the introduction with these two. Now, how are we going to beat, or not beat, but how are we going to build the score? So I think something like Incineroar is necessary, along with something like the Porygon-2. And this is the core of this team, right? Similar to like Palkia stuff, where like, you could lead Incin Dialga, click Fake Out, on one slot, then help set up Trick Room. But then, from there, you have potential endgames with like Calyrex and Porygon, that kind of thing. Same thing like with Palkia, but Palkia Incin leads, right? But again, the Incineroar is just good into the mirror, right? Against an opposing Calyrex Ice Rider, what do? You have Dialga for that. So there's that. But then Incineroar also just helps it a little bit even better, right? Because you can always intimidate it. And then it's good for Zacian, good against the Shadow Rider stuff, good against Lunala. And Porygon more or less can do the same thing there, right? Again, you almost pin that Shadow Rider slot, and as well as a few other things, you know, that P2 can also help you with, like even like with Eerie Impulse, right? So the Eerie Impulse can even help against like other Palkias and other Dialgas, which, you know, your own Dialga or Calyrex might have trouble with. So if you could just mitigate their damage and then just, you know, overpower them with yours, then that's fine, right? The P2 also is good against Lunala, and we also mentioned the Shadow Rider. You know, you just break all their things with a dark move or a ghost move like Foul Play. So there's that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do something similar that we did before and organize the speed tiers where these two don't speed tie each other, but still outspeed Calyrex outside of Trick Room. So this way we can self-proc the weakness policy on this Pokemon, which is exactly what we're gonna do with something like Throat Chop and Foul Play, right? So we've done that before and we're gonna do it again. It just makes sense, right? But this is the 4. And what's also cool about Dialga that again it can do that Palkia cannot is pass on those Steel Spike and Quake boosts to the Porygon and then make it unkillable. And then you just get into these end games where like you're just clicking, you know, recover and chipping away with Foul Play every other time, getting Trick Room back up until, you know, the opponent just can't break the Porygon and then they just eventually lose, right? And then you can even like quote unquote timer stall them with this kind of strategy. But from here, I had trouble picking the last 2 slots and I needed a little bit of help. So I asked some people that were like, you know, 10 times better than me, that I have pretty good relations with. So I asked some help from like Buenti, I've asked some help from Pengi, I've asked some help from Neil. And these are all players that, you know, have been on the channel before and have, you know, made great teams and have done very, very well in tournaments. So, you know, I ran this stuff by them and, you know, they more or less said the same thing, except Neil. He was giving me some like interesting Neil sets with the 6-mon, and you'll see what we mean in a second. But they all agree that there needs to be a little bit of redirection here. You know, it just makes the Trick Room setup a little bit easier, right? So Indeedee was the 5th option that we went with. Originally, I had, let me remove the Indeedee for a second. Originally, I had something like Thundurus with the Lumberry, and it was Defiant, right? And the reason I went with this at the time was because I wanted to discourage Incineroar leads, right? You know, because, you know, if you intimidate Calyrex, it just doesn't enjoy it, especially when you're going for Trick Room, right? But then, you know, you have Dialga for that, right? You can just like max Quake it, switch in your Calyrex in, deny the berry, and it just dies, right? So Thundurus wasn't really helping me in that regard. Like, it was good against like Venusaur stuff, you know, in case they want to click like Sleep Powder stuff, but then we have other ways to get around that, right? So I removed the Thundurus and we went with the Indeedee here, and we went with the move Safeguard, right? So Safeguard, oh, let me put Psychic Terrain here. Again, what Safeguard does is, you know, it protects you from status. So no burns, no sleep, no paralysis. It's a really nice move. And again, with the redirection, you can go like Indeedee Calyrex leads, Indeedee Porygon leads, and then set up Trick Room. They might even kill the Indeedee if you're lucky, and then you can get in Dialga and Calyrex and then just Dynamax and smash, right? More often you'll do the Dialga Dynamax, and then Calyrex can just help support by just clicking Glacial Lance on things. Because if you Dynamax Calyrex, then Dialga is not so great without it, but, you know, there are some games where like it just has to be like the way it is. But I do think the Indeedee was absolutely necessary here. So there's our redirection mon, and then here was the interesting slot. So I wasn't sure how to go with this one. Now, at first glance, maybe something like Regieleki, or, you know, just for like extra speed control, give the team a little bit of a fast mode, was also cool. You know, go with like Volt Switch, you know, something like P2 Aleki lead, Volt Switch, click Trick Room, and then you pivot into either Dialga or Calyrex, and then, you know, now you have a good position in the next turn. So that was an interesting call. You know, it helps against the Shadow Rider matchup, get a little bit of speed control. You know, and again, the Ogre matchup, a little bit more security there, especially if we have to focus Sash. I also considered the Rillaboom here. just for like something to hit Gastrodons with, or even like Kyogre, because if you notice, with these 5, unless you're running Seed Bomb Calyrex, there's no way to really deal super effective damage into the Kyogre, right? Or even like the Gastrodon. Now you might say, why would Gastrodon come in here? To yawn spam, because that's what they always do. So I also consider the Rillaboom here, and then you get an extra fake out user. So you know, on paper it made sense, right? But in the end, I felt like the Dialga was the better call here. So we went with the Dialga, right? And this is the 6, right? So what we're gonna do is now we're gonna build the team with the items, the EVs, and the movesets, and then we'll show a couple of test games where we use the squad, and then we'll wrap it up from there, right? And again, everything that we do here with the team building, with the EVs, the items, and the movesets, it's all also done with a tier 3 sub to the channel with team building, right? So if you are interested in team building with me, just like how I've done on the channel already, or what I'm about to do with this team, make sure you take a look at the description make sure you take a look at the link in the description below, and consider doing a tier 3 sub where you and we sit down in a Discord call. I teach you a little bit how to do the EVs, and just basic VGC fundamental stuff that, you know, they don't teach you in the game, but they teach you if you watch YouTube, or if you watch me in that regard, right? So definitely consider it. But now, again, before I get even more sidetracked, let's go ahead and build this team. All right, so for Dialga, I think from, you know, Life Orb is always a must. Now we normally would have like something like telepathy if we had, you know, maybe a Landorus on this team, or something that clicks Earthquake, but we don't have any of it. So we're just gonna go with pressure, and hopefully go into games where like dropping their PP actually matters, right? So from here, I feel like the Dragon move is good. You couldn't go Draco Meter if you want. But for a little bit extra oomph, and not having, you know, your special attack dropped, I believe the signature move for Dialga was necessary here, and I believe it's escaping my mind at the moment. Roar of Time, that's what it was. Okay, so Roar of Time is here. Of course, Flash Cannon, the Steel move. Now you can go Steel Beam for a stronger dynamics move, but you know, again, outside the max is just not that good. Earth Power. And now originally, check this out, originally we had Trick Room here, right? You know, so this way you can go with like Indeedee-Dialga leads, or even Instant Dialga, but it was decided that we're not going to have Trick Room on this Dialga at all, and we're going to have a rock move called Power Gem. Okay, now 4 attacks Dialga is something that has been done and has been used in Series 12. It just, you know, most or some Dialgas have Trick Room. And then, you know, there's no protect. Now the reason why, you know, the rock move is good is because, you know, flying types, something like a Charizard is annoying for this team, right? But if you can get speed control on it with the Regieleki, for example, or even like get Trick Room up, then you just click the rock move and Zard just dies, right? And then you're kind of just chilling from there. So really nice, good against like Thundurus as well, you know, Life Orb, Max Rockfall. Thundurus doesn't want to deal with that. Again, granted we have Calyrex, but again we have to get Trick Room up first. So, you know, the rock move is really helpful here. You can even argue the ice move, but we already have this. And then again, the electro move is also something, but again we have the Regieleki. So it's all about like, well, what the heck do I put on this thing? So let's figure it out. And then we ultimately went with Power Gem, or at least I did. And then there's really no other move you can really give it here. I was looking at Rain Dance for a second. Yeah, I think Power Gem just makes a lot of sense. Policy, Calyrex. So again, Glacial Lance, the signature move, high horsepower. Of course, Trick Room, and then Protect. Right now, again, you can make the argument that, you know, you can forego Protect for Seed Bomb, but I mean, like, yeah, but okay. Again, the justification for Seed Bomb is for the Kyogres and the Gastrodons, right? But again, you can just overpower it with Glacial Lance. Like, what, you know, like Gastrodon comes in, so what? You just click Glacial Lance, it just dies. So like, who cares? So that I felt like Protect is just too good in this kind of team, and just Calyrex in general, especially with a weakness policy where you can bait a potential Dynamax move, Protect, get it activated, you have your Trick Room up, and then you go from there, right? Incineroar, I think Shuka is still the way to go. You want to intimidate those Groudons, and then survive to live to tell the tale in the following turn. So Flare Blitz is of course standard, Fake Out, standard, Parting Shot, standard. And then here you can make the argument for Taunt, you know, just to stop Amoonguss, but we have the Safeguard on the Indeedee, so I think, excuse me, I think Throw Chop is just the way to go in the end. Okay, speaking of Indeedee, Psychic Seeds is going to be important here. And then, of course, follow me for that redirection move. Expanding Force, you gotta have at least one attack, right? And then, of course, Helping Hand, just to help Calyrex and Dialga do extra damage here. And again, the benefit here with like Helping Hand stuff is, let's say you get Trick Room up and then you have a Calyrex on the field, right? And then, you know, what you want to do is, you know, don't commit the max yet, because, you know, they're probably going to swap in their Incineroar to intimidate you, and then you have a -1 Dynamax Ice Force. So what you do is you just click some chip damage first with like Glacial Lance. Even if the Incineroar swaps in, that's good, right? Because you're -1, and then next turn what you do is you click Foul Play into your own Calyrex, and because your Calyrex was already intimidated, the Foul Play self-proc actually does less into your own Calyrex, and then you go from -1 to +1. You click Max Quake, the Incineroar is dead. No Berry, no Shuka Berry on their side, because, you know, you have Unnerve, right? So that's my strategy there with this kind of duo here. And then again, with the Indeedee, the Safeguard is just meant to deny the status stuff, right? So yeah, you can also do the same thing with like Helping Hand stuff, right? That's where I was getting at. Like, why did I tell that story with Porygon? So helping, like -1, all of a sudden just becomes neutral, and then you have Helping Hand, right? So then the Incineroar Berry just doesn't activate, right? Especially after the chip. So that's my argument there. All right, now for here with the Electi, Focus Sash is just the only item that makes any kind of sense. Now I'm gonna show you a couple of sets here, and this is what was suggested by my good old buddy Neil. But we'll start with the standard stuff here. I think Electro Web is good, and then you have something like Thunderbolt, right? It's just very standard stuff. Volt Switch, and then Protect, right? This is as standard of an Elecki set as it gets, right? And it's all you really needed to do. But what could be also kind of cool, and I probably won't make this as the rental. I'll probably use this version as the rental, but something to think about that was suggested by Canada's Finest is this. So what we do is we run Sash Elecki still, but first we go a screen set with Light Screen and Reflect, right? Because, you know, on these kinds of teams, like especially with Dialga, you miss Grimmsnarl, right? You miss Grimmsnarl with like Light Screen, Reflect, just to add more bulk to this kind of team. And then you also miss like Thunder Wave, right? Because Grimmsnarl Thunder Wave was kind of like busted. And then from here, okay, so you have Screens Elecki, you have Thunder Wave, you know, that could be useful. And then you need one more move here. Of course, it has to be an attacking move. So you could do something like Thunderbolt, right? And then from here, what you could do is, because you're Sash already, and you know you're clicking quote-unquote Trick Room, you could even go like Modest Elecki with this Sash. This is what was recommended to me. You know, I still need to like test this a little bit more, but like, you know, it is a little interesting, right? To do something like this. So I may do this like off camera and stuff like that, but for now we'll just give you the standard stuff. Electro Web, Thunderbolt, oh, that's Thunder, and then Volt Switch, and then Protect, right? Now, again, if you don't like Volt Switch, you can even argue something like Eerie Impulse on the Elecki, but you already have that on Porygon. So maybe you even consider Max Airstream or Max Strike potential. So something like Hyper Beam is good, or even something like, again, Bounce, if you want to go for the Airstream stuff on this kind of team. But I feel like the pivot move is pretty good with Volt Switch, right? So there's the Elecki here. And again, I still don't even know if Elecki is the correct mon in this 6th slot. Maybe even Rillaboom might be a little bit better, probably not like the best, but still being explored. But I felt like these 5 is the way to go at the moment, right? So let's just go ahead and reveal the GIFs while we have some time. So again, Dialga and Calyrex are the main 2. Then from here, it's the Porygon, it's the Incineroar, the Elecki, and of course the Indeedee. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and finish off the EVs. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we're gonna do these EVs. So because we don't have Trick Room on this Dialga, I think what we're gonna do is make it a little bit faster than one might expect, and that's also kind of cool in a best of 3 because they don't know your EV spreads, right? So here's what we're gonna do. We're still gonna go modest, right? We're still gonna go modest, but instead of going like my usual 112 with Trick Room just to underspeed like Groudons, we're gonna go the opposite way, and we're gonna go something to outspeed them, but a little bit more. So normally you would need about 120, right? Yeah, so something like this, or even something like this, right? Yeah, something like this. 60 speed Dialga, 118, right? So this is to outspeed the Radiant Sun Groudon, which goes to 160, right? And then some might go 117 just to outspeed them. But if you're at 118, you outspeed those Radiant Groudons outside of Trick Room, right? So if you like that speed tier, so then you do something like this, where you have just even numbers in your bulk. You know, you could just max your special attack like this, and then just go into the HP like this. And if you want to be a little bit more optimal, you can still keep the third bump here and just go 199 and just keep it like this, right? So this is again to outspeed, you know, the Rinya Groudons with this speed tier, and then you just go into special attack, even numbers in the bulk, and then Life Orb chip optimization with the HP, right? You end in the 9, right? Because you're taking 19.9 damage per turn, because if you were to break the threshold like this, all right, now you're taking 20 damage per turn from the Life Orb, right? Why would you need to take extra damage more than you need to? So then you just do it like this, right? This is if you want to run 60 speed, but we're actually gonna go even faster than this, and consider doing a little bit less bulk. So we'll go 189 instead, and we'll go 140 into the speed. So the thing here is, you know, first of all, 120, if I go to 120 or 121, I'm outspeeding Thundurus after +1, which is kind of cool. Then I can click the rock move. This speed tier originally was for something like Cinderace, back when Cinderace was still relevant in VGC, in other previous formats. But then like you put 127, you're like, why? What is the benefit here? So, you know, if you had like, you know, Tailwind stuff, or even like Thunder Wave, like we had on the Gieleki, you can outspeed base 100s that are +1, right? Because if you go something like Charizard, for example, or even Zapdos, doesn't matter which, 167 times 1.5, right, on the calculator, goes to 250, right? So then if you go to, you know, something like 126 or 127, you outspeed those base 100s after their +1 if you had Tailwind on this team. That's why some Dialgas were going for this, because they had the Whimsicott on the team with the Calyrex, right? We don't have that here, but we do have the Thunder Wave on the Gieleki on the other build, right? So that's the reason there, but without it, it's still okay. I think a faster Dialga, something like this, is still very, very nice. And then you outspeed pretty much every single Groudon. But what also the main reason with this speed tier, you know, even though I don't have the Thunder Wave on this set, is the Reshiram stuff, right? Because if you look at this team, you're like, Reshiram actually looks really good against this. So we need to outspeed it, right? Because if we don't outspeed it with our Dialga, then we're in some trouble, right? So that's why I went to 128, because I looked on Pikalytics and I saw like some of the common speeds that Reshirams were running, and the faster ones were at like 126, 127. So I chose 128 just so that we can outspeed them, click Max Dragon, smash them, and not have to worry about them ever again, right? Now, granted, they have the Assault Vest, but that's still okay, because we still have the Porygon-2 that can, you know, do Eerie Impulse even if they survive, and then we go from there. But this speed tier is for the Reshiram stuff, as well as the base 100s, you know, with the +1 speed boost. All right, now from here, I feel like we still can just go, all right, so we're gonna go Adamant here instead of Brave, and just a little bit of speed. So I'm gonna go with 10, but I'm just gonna go up to, yeah, something like this. Yeah, so this way, when we have 58 and 59 speed with the Incineroar and Porygon, the Calyrex can outspeed them, so these two can underspeed it, and then click either Foul Play or Throat Chop, and then proc the policy, and then we're fine, right? But other than that, we're still gonna go 252, 252, Adamant, and then a little bit of Spadef. Now, that being said, you know, in the past I've done something like this, where I've just gone to the third bump, and then just went into the Spadef like this, and you're more than welcome to do this. I think this is still fine, but I just went, this time around, I just went 252, 252. right, Incineroar. So to achieve that speed tier that we were talking about, so we're gonna have to go sassy here, and then basically no speed Incineroar. Okay, so 58, right? So we're gonna outspeed, or in other words, underspeed it, and then be able to proc the policy, right? So then we'll just go to the second EV bump here, to 156. You see how you go from 141 to 143, right? You're jumping 2 stats. This is what we call the EV benchmark. And again, if you don't know what an EV benchmark is, you got to check out our channel, check out our video where we talk about EV bumps and we explain what they are. We actually have a video for it, so thank God. I'm tired of answering that in the comments, but you know, I understand. You know, there's nothing in the game that tells you about it, so unless you watch videos like this. So or you can still comment in the video below and ask what the heck is an EV bump, and then I'll still tell you anyway, and then I'll still explain it, of course. So from here, you just max speed the Incineroar and then just go all in on the defense. You just need to be bulky and just pivot around. All right, this is what Incineroar does in VGC, right? You don't need any attack on it. It's totally fine. All right, Porygon, the next one. Trace is still fine. The Eviolite here, and again, the goal with the Eviolite is just so that we have even numbers in the defense and special defense. Oh, I forgot to put the moves here. Of course, it's going to be Recover and Trick Room. Okay, so let's go back to this. So 244 HP, just to optimize the weather damage from the max Hailstorm that we're going to set with either the Calyrex or the max Rockfall that we're going to set with Dialga. So 191 is the way to go, because 191 divided by 16, if you take out your calculator real quick, it's going to be 11.9375, which rounds down to 11. So you're only going to be taking 11 damage per turn with the weather damage, right? So if you break the threshold and you go 192, now you're taking 12. You don't need to be taking 12, just take 11. So round it down. Then from here, again, Sassy is the way to go, just like our Incin. And then you just need a tiny bit of speed, right? So right now, if you put 0, your speed time, your Incineroar, right? You don't want that. Just underspeed it. Underspeed the Calyrex, but outspeed the Incineroar, just so that you know who goes first. So that's the way we do it here. And I believe this was like Jeremy's way of doing this when he did really well with the Reshiram Calyrex squad in the recent regional. I believe it was like a month ago or something like that. So shout out to them for even coming up with this. And now we're barring it, just like we did in the other videos. So Indeedee, again, the goal with the Indeedee is you just want to go bold here, or relaxed, in other words, just so that you get that defense boost. So this way you can take one Zacian Behemoth Blade, and then, you know, take another attack, and then Porygon just sets up Trick Room, or Calyrex sets up Trick Room. So with our Indeedee, we're going bold here. I still want to outspeed other Indeedees just in case if I ever need to do it. But the main thing here is just to go here with the bump 175, just to optimize the weather damage, max speed defense. That's really all we need. And then from here, you know, just 1 point here, 1 point there, just so that we use up all our EVs. And that's all we really need the Indeedee to do, right? So 1 point in the speed to outspeed other Indeedees potentially, and then enough bulk where we can take that Zacian Behemoth Blade. All right, and Regieleki, this is the easiest one. I'm still gonna go Timid here, just because, you know, I'm not ready to try out the quote unquote, you know, Neil set. I won't put that as a rental. We'll just do it like this, and I still think this is fine, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and make the pace for this squad. So yeah, it's a pretty cool team, right? Like, it's not like super dominant, something like, you know, Palkia, Calyrex Ice, or even like Reshiram. I think this is the third of the bunch in terms of duos with Calyrex Ice. I think those two outclass it, just because they offer more and don't have as many weaknesses. But I still think this duo can work a little bit, right? Just from you know, a conceptual point of view, right? I think it's still okay. I think it's like a B minus, a B combo. I still think it's okay. So yeah, the problem is the dynamax, right? Because Dialga outside of max is just not that great, and then Calyrex, you know, if you're dynamaxing this, you don't dynamax Dialga, and then you may consider just not bringing it. And then this thing just gets Intimidate spam. Now you can go like White Herb, but I still don't think that. I'm not the biggest fan of White Herb. I think it's a good item. I just don't like it personally. But let's just go ahead and take a look at it in some test battles on the test account. Okay, so this is like a very hyper offensive team with like the Ogre, Calyrex Shadow stuff with Kartana and Regieleki. We did something like this before, right? So here it is again. Now it looks like Trick Room can be easy to set up. Like the Calyrex can't really do too much here as a lead, just because we have a Porygon, an Incineroar, and an Indeedee. So I'm not worried about that if he leads the Calyrex. I'm more worried about stuff like Ogre plus a Lecky, something like that, or Ogre and even Kartana. Things that just actually do a lot of damage, especially if they dynamax, right? But I feel like Indeedee Porygon is the way to go. Now, granted, if it's like Helping Hand stuff, then maybe the Helping Hand Water Spout P2 might have some trouble living, but we'll address that if he leads it, and then we'll go from there, right? So we'll just go Indeedee P2 and see how we respond to it. It's just Kyogre and it's Calyrex. Perfect. So this is actually incorrect by our opponent. If he did something like maybe Whimsicott with Kyogre, Helping Hand, Water Spout, that probably would be a better play. Just have a shot at KO the P2, but this, he has no shot. So I'm a little bit comfortable here. I'm just going to click a very simple Follow Me Trick Room here in case he decides to max the Kyogre and go for Max Geyser. I don't want the P2 to die to that. There's the Leaf Storm, so there's the Tech. Okay, and there's the Water Spout. So Porygon does live, and I think we probably could have even lived the Helping Hand play. I'm looking at the HP. So Calyrex comes in. All right, he goes into Whimsicott. Probably doesn't want to give up the damage yet to my Calyrex. So here's the Glacial Lance, and now this probably confirms he's sashed, which he is. So that means the Shadow Rider is not sashed. So I'll be aware of that in the later game. See, there's the Helping Hand play. And now we have Eerie Impulse, and this is what P2 does best. And I felt like he should have just led these two in the beginning. He probably would have had a better shot. But now we live because we are able to Eerie Impulse the Kyogre. There's the Indeedee. All right, there's a Follow Me. That's why I went for this, the Foul Play plus the Lance. I felt like he should have just protected. So this way he stalls another turn of Trick Room, and you keep the Indeedee alive. The Ogre's still putting out some damage, even though it's pretty much Eerie Impulse. But again, you're still stalling out Trick Room turns, and but again, because he has Shadow Rider in the back, it doesn't really help him that much because I have a P2 and I still have stuff in the back like an Incin. So down goes the Indeedee. Calyrex has a +2 boost. He has no choice but to remove it, and now the Ogre is trapped here with the Dialga, and he's -2. So remember, I know that this Calyrex is not sashed because I saw it on the Indeedee. So you might as well just go for the go and remove the Calyrex. Just keep neutering the Ogre, and that's really all she wrote here. Not a whole lot that this Kyogre can do. This is how we deal with the Kyogre, right? We don't have any grass moves. We just click Eerie Impulse and we deal with it, right? Even with the redirection, and he still didn't, stop the P2 from Eerie Impulsing it. So that's one kind of battle. That's how you have to deal with those hyper offensive teams like this. Let's look at another. All right, so this one's a little bit more interesting. This one's Calyrex Zacian with Blastoise. This looks like the same team that we just made, except we put Snorlax here instead of the Regieleki. So I'm waiting for like a Lecky Calyrex leads or a Lecky Blastoise. Really, again, he doesn't really have a way to stop the Trick Room, right? I mean, granted, he could keep Rillaboom in the back, and then just remove my terrain and fake out my P2, but then he just dies next turn, right? Like, what else can he do? So here we go. There's Incin, and there's Zacian. So he wants to put on a lot of pressure in the beginning, maybe click fake out. He might even have Rillaboom in the back where he can do that. But again, if he swaps out Zacian for Rillaboom just so he can click fake out, where's the damage going to come from next turn? Because then he can't fake out next turn. Then we just click Follow Me. And then, well, actually he could, right? But again, he's just wasting his time and just wasting his fake outs. So, but he led this, so this is fine. This is almost a guaranteed Trick Room here. I think I took Intrepid Sword. That was kind of funny. So there's the Behemoth Blade. There's the, that's Close Combat Incineroar. That was actually kind of funny. Indeedee goes down. Free Trick Room, free swap. Here comes Dialga. And again, everything here, you can just click Max Quake. Calyrex Shadow Rider can't really do much in the end game. Zacian, we can remove it right now. I anticipate a Protect here, maybe even a swap. So this is why on this slot, I'm going for Max Wormwood, just in case he stays in and clicks Protect. And he does have the Rillaboom, so I felt like he should have did that the first turn, but he didn't do it. So there's a protect as expected, and here's the foul play just to respect the Zacian and chip it a little bit. And there's the worm win. Now that could have been AV, but again, we're Life Orb, we're Dialga. I don't know if it mattered too much, but maybe it did. Here's Incin. So I do a cheeky little play. I swap in the Calyrex just to get a nerf going and deny Incineroar the berry and just quake it, remove it, not have to deal with it. I get a Spadef boost on both of these to prepare against the Calyrex in the end game. He goes for player if he misses, unfortunate, but doesn't really matter a whole lot. And that's all he really can do is click forfeit because there's still 2 turns of Trick Room. He can only really double protect 1 time. Now, can he do it again? Sure, but again, the chances are still in my favor that we win, and I have an Incineroar in the back anyway. So, yeah, that's how you beat those 2. So let's take a look at the pace one last time. Yeah, so this is it. So again, not sure about the Gieleki slot. I think it's still okay. I think I can find some use for it. Maybe even the other set that I showed with the Thunderwave screen set might be useful. But you know, the other 5 are pretty good. You know, you have Dialga and Calyrex, obviously, for your damage dealing. You have the support behind Incineroar, Porygon, and Indeedee. Porygon is really, really good at supporting this team. You know, just with like eerie impulse stuff, and then just clicking foul play and clicking Trick Room. Really, really good. And 4 attack Dialga, I think, is the way to go at the moment. But more on that in a bit in another video. But I think this duo looks interesting with this kind of build, at least for ladder. You know, for Master Ball stuff, like you can still win because it's best of 1. It's still fine. It gets a little bit more interesting in like a tournament, right? But I think for what we want to do on ladder, I think this is still okay as a duo. All right, so let me know what you think about this squad. And again, if you're interested in coaching, take a look at the video description and you know, click the link and consider team building with me with that tier 3 sub. We'll sit down in a Discord call and we'll hash it out again. But yeah, now in the next video, it'll be July. We'll put out 5 more rental codes for you to try out, just to have a little bit more fun for Series 12 just before Worlds. But yeah, that's what I've got planned. So we'll be back with that rental code video in the next one. Guys, have a good one. Peace out. Be safe. Have a good night. And on that note, I also just realized I forgot to do the spreads on the Porygon-2 set. So again, we just want the even numbers here. So 144 and then 140 in the defense mark. So I think that's the way to go with the P2. So now again, let's just take a look at some of the test battles.